Welcome to e-GMAT. My name is Stacey. Thank you for stopping by. I'm going to be working with you today on this question about some pine trees. We're going to be using the e-GMAT three-step approach to tackle this question. So let's get to it. Utilizing the sentence structure, we're going to start our meaning analysis by extracting the meaning. As we begin reading, we see in some types of pine tree, so we know we're dealing with a type of pine tree. We're going to keep reading and find out what's going on with this type of pine tree. We read a thick layer of needles protects the buds. So immediately I get this picture of this really thick layer, and this layer is made of these needles, and we get all of these needles, and these needles are protects these buds, so kind of surrounding these buds. And as we keep reading, we find that from which new growth proceeds. So we get new growth from these buds. So this growth proceeds from these buds. Okay, that's making sense. As we keep reading, we read, consequently, they are able to withstand forest fires relatively well. Okay, so I'm going to pull the key aspects of this sentence. And what I mean by key aspects here is, I mean the main ideas of the sentence. I like to keep track of what's going on, make sure everything is logically correct. I love when a sentence is straightforward, but we always want to make sure that we pay attention to the meaning so we avoid silly mistakes. And we want to make sure we extract that meaning and it's logical. So we know the sentence discusses some species of pine tree, and that's being talked about right up here. That's our first main idea or key aspect. The second thing we get is that a thick layer of needles protects the buds. So this is our second piece, that this thick layer of needles, like I said, all those needles covering those buds to protect them. And then the third aspect is the buds regenerate growth for the tree. So we get this regeneration of this growth, this new growth proceeds. So that growth is what we get is going to probably regenerate that tree. And that fourth piece is as a result of this protection of the buds, this can withstand the forest fires relatively well. So this is that fourth piece. Okay, so we get all of this making sense. We have this type of pine tree. Some types, not all types, but in some types, this thick layer of needles protects the buds from which new growth proceeds. Consequently, they are able to withstand forest fires relatively well. Meaning seems pretty straightforward. So let's move into that second step of analysis, which is that error analysis. Now, first, I like to start with my foundational building blocks, which are going to be my subject-verb pairs. And I have those highlighted. Subjects are in blue, verbs are in green for you. So we have a thick layer protects, growth proceeds, they are able. So all of these are green in number, and they're making logical sense. All right, the verb tenses are in present tense, properly express information about the pine tree. Now, let's talk about this pronoun they that's sitting right here. Now, when I was doing the meaning analysis, I said, as a result of this protection, the buds can withstand forest fires relatively well. But is this pronoun they, what is this referring to? Is it referring to some pine trees, or could we logically say that these pine trees are able to withstand forest fires relatively well? I mean, we're talking about that these needles protect the buds, and from these buds, new growth proceeds, and consequently, is it some pine trees are able to withstand forest fires relatively well? I mean, logically, I might be able to make that argument. Or does they refer to the buds? Are we saying that this thick layer of needle protects the buds, and therefore the buds are able to withstand forest fires relatively well? Now, I'm going to make the argument here that this thick layer of needles protects the buds. And because these buds are protected, even if the tree burns, because these buds are protected, consequently, the buds are able to withstand the forest fire relatively well because they're the ones that are protected, and then the new growth comes from the buds. So it's actually the buds So I'm going to write buds right here that are able to withstand those forest fires relatively well. That's making logical sense. It agrees in number. The plural they agrees with the plural buds. So that checks that pronoun. It's logical. It's making sense. Agrees in number. So no worries there. Now we have the modifier from which sitting right here, and this is properly referring to the buds. As we've talked about, this communicates the growth comes from these buds. So that works out. There's no parallelism, comparison, or idiom errors. So the original sentence looks to be free from errors. However, we have to work through our answer choices and make sure we can reject those on solid ground and confidently accept option A. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put choice A on reserve, and we're going to take a look at choice B. Now, I want you to take a look at this expression that's sitting right here, a thick needle layer. And get a visual of that. Is that communicating the same thing as we saw in option A up here of a thick layer of needles? Now, when I think of a thick layer of needles, I'm thinking of a lot of needles surrounding the buds. But when I read a thick needle layer, that to me communicates just a single possible layer. Maybe the layer's made of needle, not necessarily a good number of needles that provide protection. So this is an expression error. This usage doesn't precisely communicate the same meaning that we get from that thick layer of needles. Also, take a look at the modifier from where in this option. So the use of where is used to communicate something comes from a place or a location. So we have the use of where here in addition to the use of from. So it's almost like we have a roll of doubles here because together these are both communicating that they're coming from a location. So we definitely have redundancy. So we can go ahead and reject option B here. Let's take a look at choice C. Now, you'll notice right away with choice C that we have the singular subject, a thick layer, and the plural verb protect. So right away, we have that deterministic subject verb must agree in number error. So we can reject choice C right away for that subject verb error. In addition to that, take a look at this structure that we have. Any forest fires is separated from withstand. We have this adverbial phrase sitting in the middle, and these two entities, any forest fires withstand, should be closer together. They shouldn't be separated by this adverb. This creates an awkward construction, so we really need something that avoids that kind of awkward construction. Now, choice D. If you read through this, since the buds from which new growth proceeds are protected by a thick needle layer, consequently, they can therefore. Hello, redundancy. We have since, consequently, and therefore, all expressing causation in this sentence. Whole lot of redundancy going on. In addition to the use of thick needle layer again, which we discussed in option B as an expression error, so we can reject choice D. Now, choice E. Again, lots of words used in choice E to express causation. Because, consequently, therefore, and it's sitting at the end of the sentence, as a result. So we only need one word to express causation, and here we have 4 expressions. So we can reject choice E for the use of redundancy, and again, that usage of the expression a thick needle layer, not giving that precise visual communication that option A gives us of a thick layer of needles, giving us that visualization of all of those needles protecting those buds. So we can reject choice E, and choice A is indeed our correct answer. Our meaning analysis worked for us from the beginning. So our key takeaways here, always make sure that your subject-verb pairs agree in number. Double check your modifiers and make sure they properly communicate the intended meaning. Words that communicate the same thing like causation can create redundancy in a sentence. You only need to say it once. And please make sure, if you found this solution helpful, that you subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get updates on more solutions and articles. Make sure you like the video and check the description for helpful links and resources. We have a great article on debunking pronoun myths and some useful links to some of our free verbal sessions. Happy learning!